introduction allowed some sense of the narrative flow. The heart of the Commedia, the Divine Comedy, is to be found in Cantos 16, 17, 18 of the Purgatorio, which is, I think, my favorite of the canticles, though it is hard to choose. They each have their own unique qualities. He modulates his poetic tone to fit the subject matter. It is dark and crass, often in the Inferno, and then there's this growing anticipation and well, yeah, there's a lot of suspense in the Purgatorio, and then in the Paradiso, which is a remarkable achievement, because you wouldn't think that this would work as a poem. There's a lot of philosophical passages, and there's not the same geography as you have. There's a lot of variety when you have in Inferno. You have this very imaginative construction of Mount Purgatory, but then you have the celestial spheres in Paradiso, and he's able to make that interesting. He has this very clever mechanism in which all the saints are seated in this celestial rose, this white rose that is created as, in a way, imaging the Trinity. But then he has this kind of avatar movement where the souls of the various degrees of heaven show up in the different spheres of heaven. The seven planets, the wandering bodies in the sky, and then you have the starry sphere and the prima mobile, the fastest of the spheres. But the actual saints themselves reside in the Empyrean, beyond all this motion, beyond all this physical motion, and he makes that work. And the achievement of each of the canticles is different and astonishing. I want to preface today's discussion by thinking a little bit about 16, 17, 18 of Purgatorio. He is centering the whole of the poem on love. He has first this man, Marco Lombardo, talk about the soul coming from the hand of the creator as a child at play and going after what delights it. And the technical kind of scholastic term, which lies behind a lot of this anthropology, as it were, in these cantos, is subrazione boni. That is, we do what we do under the aspect of good. That is, anytime we go after something, it's because it looks good to us. Now, sometimes it's not actually good. So we have to think about what good means. Good is that which perfects us, that which augments our being. We have instinctive appetites for things that just look shiny and nice and pretty, attractive. It looks good. It looks like something that we would like to get close to. And sometimes it's just merely apparent good, though. And that's the question of the virtue, the power of counsel, of considering, judgment, reason. That's where that comes in. So Dante in these cantos is dealing with the questions of love, freedom, and political order. And that those are really kind of at the heart of his whole project. The whole process of Dante the Pilgrim going through hell, purgatory, and heaven is to create a person who can speak of the most important things in the highest idiom, poetry, in a prophetic mode. So he wants to expose the actual source of disorder, sources of disorder in the world, and he wants us to be able to take that into our own vocations and make it possible for us, lost in our own dark woods, to bring the light of heaven into a very chaotic world. Now, he sets this poem in the year 1300, right before he becomes one of the priors of constituting the government, the highest executive of Florence. And it is ironic, it seems to me, that he sets it there knowing that we eventually will consider the fact that this putative experience doesn't change the trajectory of his life, right? It's what actually changes his life is the fact that he gets exiled, that Pope Boniface intrigues with the brother of the French king and gets the black Guelphs to oust the white Guelphs and so on. And that's what leaves him for the rest of his life for almost 2 decades without a home, without his beloved Florence. And so it's in those years of agony, of loss, that he's able to become the great poet that still moves us today. Again, back to, and that's why he's always political. The question of political order is central to this poet's work. He wrote a whole political treatise called De Monarchia. So, and it's very interesting. That's why he has he's very open to the Averroist position, because he thinks that he has this mystical kind of sensibility that the human race is open as one kind of, that the goal of human existence on this earth is to become a kind of common intellect, enjoying the light of the good and the true. For that, we need some source of order and unity enough to quash the factionalism, which is what makes him an exile. And so he believes that there should be 2 sons, as he has in that Canto 16 of Purgatorio. Marco Lombardo says, once there were 2 sons, the S-U-N, 2 sons. That is, there was the emperor and the pope. And Marco Lombardo goes on to say that the pope has usurped the imperial, the secular power, has joined the sword to the crook of the shepherd, means that disorder reigns. And so in that canto, Dante's definitely putting the weight of the genealogy of disorder on the papacy. The soul comes forth from the hand of God like a child at play, going after all the pretty things. So our desire needs to be trained to know what is actually good and what is merely apparent good. Law is what is one thing that's supposed to provide that pedagogy. It's supposed to train our desires. And then there needs to be a ruler to administer that law. So that's where Marco Lombardo talks. It goes very quickly from this account of how the human soul is attracted to what it's attracted to, and how we need order, the right kind of order, 2 sons, secular and spiritual, both of which are essential, neither of which should usurp the other. So that's Dante's fundamental vision, political vision. That's all couched in the first, Dante the Pilgrim asks Marco Lombardo, why is this world so lacking in virtue? Why is it so spiritually dark here? And it's because we have abused our free choice, meaning we haven't gotten the training of our desire that we need. We follow crooked leaders, in this case, the popes, because they're full of avarice. So when we see those 3 animals at the beginning of the Commedia that are trying to keep Dante from climbing that hill, which should call to mind the Mount Purgatory, which he ends up climbing later. The leopard, which represents probably lust, the lion, which represents pride, and then you've got the she-wolf, which is the symbol of Rome, that dear Rome, so dear to Dante, but he knows that that's a city full of avarice under the empire and under the papacy. And so it's avarice, even though it's not the worst sin, pride is, but avarice is the source of most of the disorder that Dante concentrates on in the course of the Commedia. We have to ascend the Mount of Purgatory to get that training. And so it is a reflection of, it's not in the first case that Dante is providing an eschatological tour. I mean, it really would be a mistake to read him as if he's saying, this is what it's like on the other side of death. It really isn't. The point is to illuminate this world. I mean, I do think he believes that those realms exist. I do think he's questioning. He does question. I think by using Virgil as his guide, he's putting it in our face all the time. Well, is Virgil really in hell? I think he is asking that question. I think he asks it insistently in this poem. I don't think he has pat answers. I think he asks about the mechanism of purgatory. But in the end, his first concern is to show how our life could make sense. If in our lives we let the purgations of, daily suffering cultivate the virtues, that training of our desire, and we ascend, what do we find on top? And this is when I first read this poem, I was just so struck to find the Garden of Eden at the top of Mount Purgatory. And that says something about his vision of how do you reclaim paradise? You undergo the training in virtue that requires a lot of suffering that we get certainly a lot of in this life, that he knows very intimately. Free choice comes from the training of our faculties, our sense appetites, our rational appetite, the will, our intellect. But he also has this Augustinian sense of the will as something primal, that deepest thing in us that inclines, like in the Augustinian term, the pondus, the weight towards the good. I mean, that's that primal attraction to the good is the first strand and the fundamental strand of the structure here. And that raises the question about hell and whether we can hope for the salvation of all, because the fact is every human is ordained to the good. I mean, that's what we are.